Welcome back to Sunrise. We've got Mr. Laden Salihu here with us. He's got many caps, part of which is former Commissioner for Information in Bauchi State, spokesperson, League of Northern Democrats, and several. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Nice being with you, Ope and Chamberlain.
Well, it turned out the last time we had you here, you had just thankfully come off a fire incident.
Yes.
Unfortunately, at least, you scaled through that one. Today, again, we have this unfortunate scenario that just happened in Port Harcourt, and I know it's all over the place, but what's going through your mind about all of that, though? They say, yes, accidents do happen, but how does this one strike you?
Chamberlain, we are in a moment of national grief and, of this very monumental, tragic event. It's a moment of, if you would like, melancholy. It's not something any nation should go through. Coming after the horrific, tragic, tanker incident in Jigawa, in Majia, and now this very, horrific incident, in Port Harcourt, it tells you that, first of all, commiserations to the families of the deceased. And, as a nation, we mourn. And these gentlemen on the helicopter, on board the helicopter, I think died in active service. And we pray that the families will have the fortitude to bear the loss. Having said that, I am worried. It would appear as if, as a nation, going forward, we should have, a timeline, and we should be seen to, work within the best global practices of accident management, incident management, and, a proactive and engaging approach even after such tragic events. For instance, in my opinion, I'm not an expert, but the public should always be on the same page with the authorities, the safety, management experts, and the people in government, various, players in the safety and transportation management chain, in the aviation management chain, so that when such an incident happens, look, we've had several crashes in Nigeria, very tragic. And, the information out there appears to be insufficient in a way that will give, a kind of, arrest future developments. Are the checks on our aircraft complete? Are the safety measures being adhered to 100%? 99.9% is not enough, because you're talking about lives. But all that, considered, I want to believe that, all the authorities concerned will collaborate, will engage each other, and rescue the three remaining, identify the three remaining people on board that are missing. Hopefully they will be alive. And then going forward, we should be very, very diligent in managing such situations.
Speaking about that, being diligent, it comes across as though both on land, sea, and air, when accidents happen, yes, you have agencies that are supposed to look into it. Now, assuming they do and come up with their reports, we don't, I'm not sure, maybe tell me if I'm missing something. I'm not sure I actually see us being diligent and being thoughtful, in the sense that we'll learn from those incidents and then change a thing or two. On the roads, for instance, if accidents happen on the road, you see people run into culverts. But you still see, even tomorrow, they put this very solid brick stone on the roads there, which you can crash into it. And when you crash into that kind of course, the kind of consequences. The same thing we see with the airports. So am I missing something here? Because it doesn't look as if we're critically thinking about safety across board.
I think we are kind of boxed into old traditions of doing things. My attitude to it is that, look, first of all, try as much as possible to take care of the human element on your own part, to ensure that you put all the instruments, all the policy, approaches, in place, and then follow them scrupulously to ensure that they are being adhered to. Like you said, you're driving on Nigerian highways. If you're not being on a road, for instance, from Lagos, from Shagamu to or Benin, and you're driving, on top speed, and suddenly you just run after a turn into a roadblock with several, stones. Several obstacles. You run into them, and it's an accident. Anything can happen. I don't believe that the same approach is being applied into the aviation industry. But what I'm saying is that we need to, when such incidents happen, there must be reports. And the reports, as much as possible, the authorities concerned should go a step further. Just don't lock them up in your shells or discuss them in the boardrooms or share information with the operatives concerned. No, but avail some of the information to the general public, so that we'll understand, appreciate, and celebrate.
Yeah, but is anybody
excellence.
acting on any reports that they have seen?
It's a Nigerian factor. It's now left for gentlemen like you and Maupe and your reporters to be out there and on the heels of professionals and those in charge of these organizations, to ensure that we hold them accountable. At least let us know, let us understand, let us appreciate the constraints, the limitations, the challenges, and what have you. And then let us have a conversation on the way forward. There may be experts out there who may not necessarily be within the system that will come up with options for you that you can put on the table and say, okay, I think Mr. X, Y, and Z are saying this and this and that. Shall we, gentlemen, consider? And then you have a more inclusive, professional working environment that will be to the greater benefit of Nigerians and for the safety of travelers.
Well, let me ask about whether we're learning lessons democratically speaking this time. Because I know
there you go again.
I know we price several things, but is the president, he's taking some decisions now, restricting convoys and security personnel attached to government officials, which is what some persons have clamored for a while. So does that come across to you as though, okay, they called it cost-cutting measure. Do you see it as same?
No, I think to me, it's not far enough. It has not gone deep enough. It is merely symbolic. They do not necessarily address the core issues that bedevil the economy, that we are in a crisis situation. Look, I just read a report that the Nigerian economy, is going through, the cost of living crisis that we're experiencing today. We've not seen it in the last 30 years. 30 years. And that, of course, we've said it here time and again, you have an inflation rate that is 34, racing to 35%, food inflation 40%. You have 80 million Nigerians out of 250 in multidimensional poverty. And you have a nation that is groaning. And so when you are doing what you call cost saving measures, after the deregulation or after the removal of oil subsidy, fuel subsidy, one would have expected that the removal of fuel subsidy, like the government told us at the beginning, they will rush in funds to address infrastructure deficit, to address poverty, to deal with the socially vulnerable classes. What we have seen is that we have sunken deeper into poverty. The infrastructure is not there. And when you say you have reduced the ministerial vehicles to 3, as a journalist, let me use this word loosely now, I will ask you, what about the remaining vehicles? Where are they going to be warehoused? Are they going to be kept in the garages?
That was reduced?
Of course, yes. The vehicles are there already. They've been bought. So what it means is that if I'm a minister and I have 10 vehicles, I'll keep 7. The next trip I'll recycle.
New ministries. What if they assign them to those ministries?
If they assign them to other ministries, you would also believe that 70 to 80% of all the personnel that are entitled to vehicles have them. Okay. Now, what I'm saying, Chamberlain, is that if you have a cost-saving measure, and you also have, look, leadership is all about inspiration. It's not an inverted pyramid. You have to, by your ways, by your actions, and you have to show the lead from the best of examples. You cannot buy a presidential jet for 170 billion at the going rate and buy a yacht of 5 billion and do a cost-saving measure put together that is almost just about half of these expenses. And so it's just merely symbolic.
So there's this, the different schools of thought about how things should turn out and the kind of impact they should have. So there's one that say, we expect too much too soon. Another group says, look, the challenge, the rot is so much that if they put in any policy, it might take a while for those things to happen. And then another group thinks, well, not just patient, but we seem to be so angry not to even recognize the little things that are being done, whether or not to assess whether or not they're moving us in the right direction or not. Does any one of those fit the bill? Does any one of them make any sense to you whatsoever?
Well, what we do, what I've seen in governance is that we take one step forward and we take 2 steps backward. In a country where you have, several grieving heads, several heads that go to sleep without food on the table, they are likely to miss some of the things you do if they don't create an immediate impact, in their lives.
Help us understand this. In the context of the recent policies taken, is it the reshuffle, this particular one? Which one is forward, which one is backward?
I think to me, the reshuffle is merely symbolic. Look, when you look at the reshuffle, and what I'm going to say, I will say with all sense of patriotism and humility, and I will be frank with you and with Nigerians. When you want to address the current state of affairs in Nigeria, the deprivation that is out there, the poverty and the challenges of governance, and you want to reshuffle a cabinet, Nigerians would expect, and we did expect, a radical, shake-up of the cabinet to address the core issues that are bedeviling the polity and the economy and insecurity. Look, I would tell you that, yesterday we had a conversation with a group of friends, and I told them, I said, look, what do you expect Tinubu, for instance, to do more to Nigerians in terms of security, especially in the north? Tinubu can only do his own part. You have the 2 ministers of defense from the north. You have the national security advisor from the north. You have the chief of defense staff from the north. You have the chief of air staff from the north. If these 8 heads meet in one office and come up with a blueprint to tell the president, Mr. President, this is the way to go, I am certain that he will listen to them. So we are we are held in our cocoon of lamentation and complaints upon complaints upon complaints. We are not doing the needful. So, the Minister of State for Defense is somebody that I know, I would say a friend. I also know, you know, the Defense Minister, the Senior Cabinet Minister. But, sorry, this is Nigeria. We're not getting results.
In other words, what? They're not doing their jobs as they ought to.
Probably they are overwhelmed. Probably they are not telling us their own setbacks and shortcomings and challenges, but we are not seeing the results. So one would have expected that, you know, in a cabinet reshuffle, not necessarily remove them, but take them into other areas of the cabinet where they will perform and bring core professionals that are knowledgeable in security and defense matters to take charge, because people are dying. And we cannot just keep quiet when people are dying and pretend that things are well. And the other time they killed Symbolic in Sokoto, everybody was celebrating, and we thought there was going to be a momentum in dealing with insecurity situation. All of a sudden, they have regrouped, they have run away from Sokoto to Zamfara, Kebbi, and parts of Katsina, and they are now unleashing mayhem and murder. So we are not getting results. It is not about the two ministers. It is about a system that I have seen that is almost short-circuited, almost self-inflicted with inefficiency. So we have to address these issues and address them soon. That is why, you know, we keep complaining at the League of Northern Democrats, if I would say, on the issues that are clearly damaging the integrity, the economy, and the security of the North. We need people out there that are quality minds, people that have energy, they have verve and gusto.
Do you think that this is more about communication? You know, because they tell us oftentimes that security is everybody's business. But let me go back to the president. And yes, you can put that question on the one hand, whether you think that this is about communication. Because you just mentioned people with verve, people with gusto. And people, usually those kinds of people communicate more. But let me circle back to the initial question around the president's attempt to limit the convoy of ministers to 3 vehicles. It's not his first attempt to try and cut the cost of governance. Sometime in August last year, we also saw that he came up with measures to reduce the number of people traveling with either himself, his vice president, or even ministers, as the case might be. But it's not clear whether those measures are being followed. Whether, you know, only 20 people travel with the president when he leaves the country, whether only 5 people go with the VP when he leaves the country. There have been questions as to monitoring. If the ministers go with 5 vehicles instead of 3, who is to say, oh, minister, you are flouting the president's orders? And then now we've been told that the paramilitary agencies or the military agencies are also to determine by themselves how many vehicles they should have. And then if those ones argue that, well, it wasn't just my vehicle, I had other people who were going with me, for instance, as I mean, you have worked with the governor before, and you know sometimes know how these things work. Commissioners might travel with the governor and might make the governor's convoy look long. So if those kinds of arguments come up, I mean, how are we to say that indeed the ministers are following the governor, following the president's orders, or are flouting it? I mean, is there any way to really measure this? Well,
first of all, you know, I want to believe that the president has done that with the best of intentions, all right? But then you are in a system that has over the years run, you know, for want of a better expression, on the wheels of, you know, is it corruption and so on. So there may be 3 official vehicles. The minister can tell you he has 3 more personal vehicles that he is fueling them with his own money. So we are not, in my opinion, about to see any change, drastic change in the chain of convoys that ministers have. And if you want to fact check it, how many ministers can you do at a given point? So to me, it's just literally, like I said, the president may have done it with the best of intentions, and I believe so, but then implementation is the problem. When you say, okay, for instance, the local government's autonomy issue, the Supreme Court has ruled, but operationalizing the judgment is now becoming a clear and present challenge on the grassroots. So it is the same attitude, it's the Nigerian factor. Do not, Maupe, expect to see the convoy of a minister with 3 vehicles. It won't happen. If somebody tells you it's going to happen, we're just fooling ourselves.
Why?
Because it is the way the Nigerians behave. Look,
you're saying the president's words carry no weight?
It carries weight, but he will have 7 vehicles. And he will say the 3 other vehicles are personal vehicles that I use to accompany, to pick extra, people that are seeing me off. And there's no way you can say he has flouted the president's order because FGN is written on 3 vehicles. That's what I'm saying. Now, if you want to be holistic on this issue, go back to the days of the military. I can remember when, at a time, the head of state said all ministers, all governors will ride a Peugeot 505 Series 2000. And it was followed. If you adopt that same attitude and Nigerians buy in, if we see a minister in Lugbe with 5 vehicles, you pick your phone and call the channel hotline. I've seen ministers also with 5 vehicles. Please, when he comes to your studios next time, ask him. So it is, like I said, the president has done his own bit. Mm-hmm. Nigerians also have to step in and approach these public officers. They are public officers. They run on public funds. It is not pro bono, it's not gratis. Mm-hmm. They should be able to be held accountable by the ordinary citizen, by you, me, and everyone else.
What would you recommend? Because clearly you do not have a lot of faith. I mean, there's also the argument that, how will I put it now, that former governors, for instance, who are in the president's cabinet, a number of them have retirement benefits accruing to them from their respective states. I mean, there's also that to deal with. I don't know how that's supposed to work, but how do you, if you were to implement this, given your own experience in the governor's cabinet, how would you say this should work?
I think in principle, this federal, position should be adopted by the governors and translated, holistically. In my opinion, a governor's convoy shouldn't be more than maximum 7 vehicles, maximum. Unless in the...
7?
Yeah.
What does a governor's convoy consist of anyway?
The governor's convoy, by tradition, the norm, not necessarily a rule, you have, let me quickly count them for you. You have the outrider, which may be the police. You have the road safety vehicle. You have the protocol vehicle. You have the press vehicle. You have the special advisor press or media or the press secretary's vehicle. You have the security vehicle that is in front of the governor as a decoy. You have the governor's vehicle. You have the governor's standby vehicle. You have the governor's backup security. That's 9. You have an ambulance. That is 10. You have 2 other vehicles that can be on standby for anything. A minimum of 12, sometimes 15. Some governors stretch it up to 20. They have to be fueled, they have to be serviced, they have to be maintained. The drivers have to be paid, duty tour allowances and all other officials.
The governor has 20 vehicles?
some governors have up to 20 vehicles in their convoys. This is not any, it's not news.
Ayo, you've been asking about states all the while, so perhaps this will make him ask more in terms of what the state governors have got to do.
They have to adopt, it's all cost-saving measures, because at the end of the day, it adds up, some of these expenses. They are totally unnecessary, except for states where you have, challenges of insecurity.
You cannot expect. Mr. Salihu, just a quick one, if you can hear me. There's a question that, Chamberlain, I mean, that conversation about the convoy, that's another, kettle of fish altogether. The governors have to find a way to manage their own resources in a way that the people will not get angry with them at some point. But, Mr. Salihu, there's a question that Malkwe asked the other time that I would like you to expatiate a little further on. Perhaps it is the challenge of communication. What are we saying to our people? You've talked about the fact that the League of Northern Democrats need to be more proactive in the development of the North because of all of the peculiar challenges of the North. Data says security there is way off, poverty issues are ridiculous and all of those. And it's not like the potential for development and growth are not there. So what should we be saying to the people, particularly the northern elite, both in our words and in the things that we do? What should we be communicating to the people for them to be able to take ownership of their destinies and find a way to galvanize this development in the North?
First and foremost, we must put our best foot forward. We must, in political or leadership recruitment, we must get the best professionals on board, technocrats, and those that have not only proven integrity, but have excelled to be in position of leadership. When you have garbage in, you have garbage out. I've always maintained that when you go to Lagos and you come up north, you see Nigeria literally as one country with two systems. There you're talking about a state that is doing, light rail, has gone ahead to develop. Have you been to Banana Island of recent, or have you crossed, Osborne Road going to Oniru, the new bridge and what have you? Have you seen how Lagos has been transformed into literally a mega city? Can you say that of Kaduna? Can you say that of Kano or Jos or Maiduguri or Yola or Bauchi or Sokoto?
The issues you have just raised now, my apologies, Mr. Salihu, the issues you have just raised, that there are a lot more to do with the elite. The issues that the elite themselves should be addressing directly, and not the people. So what are we saying to the people via our actions and our daily living for them to know that, look, we're all one?
We have, first and foremost, we must be altruistic. We must be seen to interface with the general public in the North, to educate them on the imperatives of, patriotism, on the necessity to have quality leadership, on the need to have a political leadership that will deliver. But as elites, we also must lead by example. We must ensure that we are not displaying obscene and provocative opulence in times of poverty and and deprivation. So the elites in the North must regroup, must do an analysis, as we have done in the League of Northern Democrats, of the critical impediments to growth in the society, out of school children in education, good governance, political recruitment, and ensure that quality, quantity, and variety obtains in leadership by example, and ensure that, sorry, Kai, let me land on this, and ensure that when you are electing officers, or when you are appointing officers, recruit the best from amongst us that can deliver. Now, so how will this conversation...
how will this conversation happen? There's a former governor of somewhere in the north, I'm not sure whether it was Kaduna, has said that at some point, the governors stopped collaborating. And we have talked countless times about collaboration here. The northern governors need to have conversations about collaboration. What do you make of that? Do you see that collaboration happening? What are the impediments to collaboration for the development of the North? Because I believe with all my heart that the North has everything it takes to develop itself. We've had it before.
That is why we said, Kayode, in the League of Northern Democrats, that we are out for a greater North and a better Nigeria, or a better North and a greater Nigeria. Maybe some of the northern governors are overwhelmed by the challenges before them, maybe. But my own take is that not all the governors, but some of the governors have literally disconnected from their people. They are operating almost like emperors and leading empires. I'm not necessarily saying this is the position of the League of Northern Democrats. This is Ladan Salihu as a political analyst, as a reporter talking, as a commentator. But then, when you are disconnected from the people, when you don't have a conversation with them, when you don't inspire them, when you don't look at their own state of poverty and get fired on to address such poverty, then governance becomes, a mere, paperwork.
All right, we'll have to anchor at that point, and we do thank you very much indeed for coming on this morning. But yes, to let you know that Kano State is supposed to conduct the local government elections tomorrow, but we don't know what's going to happen because there are conflicting court orders. So we will talk about that when we return, but for now, it's time for Business Minute.